Reflecting Christ. Foreword. This volume is the 14th book of day-by-day devotional readings to be published from the pen of Ellen G. White. This establishes a new record in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and probably is a record also in the Christian world at large. Ellen White's writings are at once so voluminous, so Christ-centered, and so practical that they continue to provide an almost endless source of materials that are admirably suited for devotional reading. During her 70-year ministry, the author spoke, through her pen, to young people, to church members, and to the world in the Youth's Instructor, Review, and Herald, and Signs of the Times. Selections for this book have been drawn from these three periodicals as well as from her books and previously unpublished manuscripts and letters. In order to bring each reading within the compass of a single page, frequent deletions have been necessary. Such omissions are indicated by marks of ellipsis. In every instance, great care has been exercised to preserve without distortion the thought and intent of the writer. Reflecting Christ, the title of this book, is a theme that recurs constantly through the writings of Ellen White. Loving the Lord deeply, the author earnestly endeavored to walk in his footsteps herself, and she ever encouraged others to look to Christ as their example. Underlining the theme of this book, she wrote, "When those who profess to serve God follow Christ's example, practicing the principles of the law in their daily life, when every act bears witness that they love God supremely and their neighbor as themselves, then will the church have power to move the world." Reflecting Christ, this should be every Christian's highest goal. The pursuit of this objective, under the impetus of the indwelling Spirit of God and the grace of Christ, can bring with it only peace and true happiness. That the meditations in this book may aid and encourage each reader in his or her walk with the Lord is the fervent prayer of the trustees of the Ellen G. White Estate, Washington, D.C. The author, Ellen Gould Harmon White, co-founder of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, writer, lecturer, and counselor, and one upon whom Seventh-day Adventists believe the gift of prophecy was bestowed, was born in Gorham, Maine, November 26, 1827, one of 8 children of Robert and Eunice Harmon. During her 70 years of active service to the Church, she found time to write voluminously. She is credited with having written 100,000 manuscript pages. This remarkable legacy to the Church could alone have occupied Ellen White's entire life, had she dedicated her time to little else but writing. However, her service for the Church embraces much more than writing. Her diaries tell of her public work, her travels, her personal labor, hostessing, contacts with neighbors, as well as of her being a mother and housewife. God blessed her abundantly in these activities. Her ambitions and concerns, her satisfactions and joys, her sorrows, her whole life, were for the advancement of the cause she loved. Ellen G. White is reputed to be the most translated woman author and the most translated author in American history. For example, her little book Steps to Christ is available in more than 100 languages. After a full life dedicated to the service of God and others, she died on July 16, 1915, confidently trusting in Him whom she had believed. Biographical notes. Ellen G. White, 1827–1915. The early years, 1827–1860. Born on a late fall day in a farmhouse near Gorham, Maine, Ellen Harmon spent her childhood and youth in nearby Portland. She married James White in 1846, and the struggling young couple lived in a variety of New England locations as they sought to encourage and instruct fellow Advent believers by their preaching, visiting, and publishing. After 11 irregular issues of the Present Truth, they launched the Second Advent Review and Sabbath Herald in Paris, Maine, in 1850. Thereafter they followed a steadily westward course, to Saratoga Springs, New York, and then Rochester, New York, in the early 1850s, and finally, in 1855, to Battle Creek, Michigan, where they resided for the next 20 years. 1827, November 26, born at Gorham, Maine. 1836, c. Broken nose and concussion at Portland, Maine. 1840, March 1, heard William Miller present the Advent message. 1842, June 26, baptized and accepted into Methodist Church. 1844, October 22, disappointed when Christ did not come. 1844, December 1, vision. 1845, spring trip to eastern Maine to visit believers, met James White. 1846, August 30, married James White. 1846, autumn, accepted Seventh-day Sabbath. 1847–1848, set up housekeeping at Topsham, Maine. 1847, August 26, birth of first son, Henry Nichols. 1848, April 2024, attended First Conference of Sabbath-keeping Adventists at Rocky Hill, Connecticut. 1848, November 18, vision to begin publishing work, Streams of Light. 1849, July 1, of 11 numbers of The Present Truth, published as a result of the vision of November, 1848. 1849, July 28, birth of James Edson, second son. 1849–1852, moved from place to place with her publisher husband. 1851, July 1, book published, A Sketch of Experience and Views. 1852–1855, inches, Rochester, New York, where husband published Review and Herald and Youth's Instructor. 1854, August 29, third son, William Clarence, born. 1855, November, moved with the publishing plant to Battle Creek, Michigan. 1855, December, testimony for the church, Number I, a 16-page pamphlet, published. 1856, spring, moved into their own cottage on Wood Street. 1858, March 14, great controversy, vision at Lovett's Grove, Ohio. 1860, September 24, son, John Herbert, born. 1860, December 14, death of John Herbert at 3 months. Years of church development, 1860 to 1868. The 1860s saw Ellen White and her husband in the forefront of the struggle to organize the Seventh-day Adventist Church into a stable institution. The decade was also crucial in that it encompassed the beginnings of Adventist health emphasis. Responding to Mrs. White's appeal, the church as a body began to see the importance of healthful living in the Christian life. In response to her Christmas vision of 1865, our first health institution, the Western Health Reform Institute, was opened in 1866. The institute later grew into the Battle Creek Sanitarium. 1860, October 1, name Seventh-day Adventist chosen. 1861, October 8, Michigan Conference organized. 1863, May, organization of General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. 1863, June 6, health reform vision at Otsego, Michigan. 1863, December 8, death of eldest son, Henry Nichols, at Topsham, Maine. 1864, summer publication of Spiritual Gifts, Volume 4, with 30-page article on health. 1864, August-September visit to James C. Jackson's Medical Institution, Our Home on the Hillside, Dansville, New York, en route to Boston, Massachusetts. 1865, publication of 6 pamphlets, Health, or How to Live. 1865, August 16, James White stricken with paralysis. 1865, December 25, vision calling for a medical institution. 1865, December, Mrs. White takes James White to northern Michigan as an aid to his recovery. 1866, September 5, opening of Western Health Reform Institute, forerunner of Battle Creek Sanitarium. 1867, purchased a farm at Greenville, Michigan, and built a home and engaged in farming and writing. The camp meeting years, 1868 to 1881. Residing at Greenville and Battle Creek, Michigan, respectively, until late 1872, and then dividing her time between Michigan and California, Ellen White spent her winters writing and publishing. During the summer she attended camp meetings, some years as many as 28. Testimonies, numbers 14 to 30, now found in Testimonies, volumes 2 to 4, were published during these years. 1868, September 1-7 attended first SDA camp meeting, held in Brother Root's Maple Grove at Wright, Michigan. 1870, July 28 second son, James Edson, married on his 21st birthday. 1870 The Spirit of Prophecy, Volume 1, published, Forerunner of Patriarchs and Prophets. 1872, July-September in Rocky Mountains resting and writing en route to California. 1873-1874 divided time between Battle Creek and California, attended camp meetings, and spent some months in 1873 in Colorado resting and writing. 1874, April 1 Comprehensive vision of the advance of the cause in California, Oregon, and overseas. 1874, June with James White in Oakland, California, as he founded the Pacific Press Publishing Association and the Signs of the Times. 1875, January 3 at Battle Creek for dedication of Battle Creek College. Vision of publishing houses in other countries. 1876, February 11 William Clarence, third son and manager of the Pacific Press, married at the age of 21. 1876, August spoke to 20,000 at Groveland, Massachusetts, camp meeting. 1877 The Spirit of Prophecy, Volume 2, published, Forerunner of the Desire of Ages. 1877, July 1 spoke to 5,000 at Battle Creek on Temperance. 1878 The Spirit of Prophecy, Volume 3, published, Forerunner of Last Part of the Desire of Ages, and the Acts of the Apostles. 1878, November spent the winter in Texas. 1879, April left Texas to engage in the summer camp meeting work. 1881, August 1 with husband in Battle Creek when he was taken ill. 1881, August 6 death of James White. 1881, August 13 spoke for 10 minutes at James White's funeral at Battle Creek. The 1880s, 1881 to 1891. Following James White's death in August 1881, Ellen White resided in California, at times in Healdsburg and at times in Oakland. She labored there, writing and speaking, until she left for Europe in August 1885. In response to the call of the General Conference. During the 2 years in Europe she resided in Basel, Switzerland, except for 3 extended visits to the Scandinavian countries, England, and Italy. Returning to the United States in August 1887, she soon made her way west to her Healdsburg home. She attended the 1888 General Conference session at Minneapolis in October and November. Following the conference, while residing in Battle Creek, she worked among the churches in the Midwest and the East. After a year in the East she returned to California, but was called back to attend the General Conference session at Battle Creek in October 1889. She remained in the vicinity of Battle Creek until she left for Australia in September 1891. 1881, November attended the California camp meeting at Sacramento and participated in planning for a college in the West, which opened in 1882 at Healdsburg. 1882 Early writings published, incorporating 3 of her early books. 1884 Last recorded public vision, at Portland, Oregon, camp meeting. 1884 The Spirit of Prophecy, Volume 4, published, Forerunner of the Great Controversy. 1885, Summer left California for trip to Europe. 1887, Summer the Great Controversy published, 1888, October-November attended Minneapolis General Conference. 1889 Testimonies, Volume 5, published, Embodying Testimonies, Numbers 31-33, 746 pages. 1890 Patriarchs and Prophets published. 1891, September 12 sailed to Australia via Honolulu. The Australian Years, 1891 to 1900. Responding to the call of the General Conference to visit Australia to aid in establishing an educational work, Ellen White arrived in Sydney, December 8, 1891. She accepted the invitation somewhat reluctantly, for she had wanted to get on with her writing of a larger book on the life of Christ. Soon after her arrival, she was stricken with inflammatory rheumatism, which confined her to her bed for some 8 months. Although suffering intensely, she persisted in writing. In early 1893 she went to New Zealand, where she worked until the end of the year. Returning to Australia in late December, she attended the first Australian camp meeting. At this camp meeting, plans for a rural school were developed that resulted in the establishment of what became Avondale College at Coranbong, 90 miles north of Sydney. Ellen White purchased land nearby and built her Sunnyside home late in 1895. Here she resided, giving her attention to her writing and traveling among the churches until she returned to the United States in August, 1900. 1892, June spoke at opening of Australian Bible School in 2 rented buildings in Melbourne. 1892 Steps to Christ and Gospel Workers published. 1894, January joined in planning for a permanent school in Australia. 1894, May 23 visited the Coranbong site. 1895, December moved to her Sunnyside home at Coranbong, where much of the Desire of Ages was written. 1896 Thoughts from the Mount of Blessing published. 1898 The Desire of Ages published. 1899–1900 encouraged the establishment of Sydney Sanitarium. 1900 Christ's Object Lessons published. 1900, August left Australia and returned to United States. The Elmshaven Years, 1900 to 1915. When Ellen White settled at Elmshaven, her new home near St. Helena in Northern California, she hoped to give most of her time to writing her books. She was 72 and still had a number of volumes that she wished to complete. She little realized how much traveling, counseling, and speaking she would also be called upon to do. The crisis created by the controversies in Battle Creek would also make heavy demands on her time and strength. Even so, by writing early in the morning, she was able to produce 9 books during her Elmshaven years. 1900, October settled at Elmshaven. 1901, April attended the General Conference session at Battle Creek. 1902, February 18 Battle Creek Sanitarium fire. 1902, December 30 Review and Herald fire. 1903, October met the Pantheism crisis. 1904, April-September journeyed east to assist in the beginning of the work in Washington, D.C., to visit her son Edson in Nashville, and to attend important meetings. 1904, November-December involved in securing and establishing Paradise Valley Sanitarium. 1905, May attended General Conference session in Washington, D.C. 1905 The Ministry of Healing published. 1905, June-December involved in securing and starting Loma Linda Sanitarium. 1906–1908 busy at Elmshaven with literary work. 1909, April-September at the age of 81 traveled to Washington, D.C., to attend the General Conference session. This was her last trip east. 1910, January took a prominent part in the establishment of the College of Medical Evangelists at Loma Linda. 1910 gave attention to finishing the Acts of the Apostles and the reissuance of the Great Controversy, a work extending into 1911. 1911–1915 with advancing age, made only a few trips to Southern California. At Elmshaven engaged in her book work, finishing Prophets and Kings and Counsels to Parents and Teachers. 1915, February 13 fell in her Elmshaven home and broke her hip. 1915, July 16 closed her fruitful life at the age of 87. Her last words were, "I know in whom I have believed." Testimonies, volumes 6 to 9, were also published in the Elmshaven years. Topics. January. Reflecting Christ, our perfect example. February. Reflecting Christ by obedience to God's law. March. Reflecting Christ through justification/sanctification. April. Reflecting Christ in our spiritual growth. May. Reflecting Christ by physical and mental development. June. Reflecting Christ in the home. July. Reflecting Christ in the church. August. Reflecting Christ through reaching out. September. Reflecting Christ through our lifestyle. October. Reflecting Christ through our character. November. How men and women have reflected Christ. December. Reflecting Christ through trials, affliction, and deliverance.